episode of Mind Your Free, the podcast. I am your hostess, Rachel Voss, and here we are, episode 22, I think. I meant to double check before I came down to record, but I'm just going to trust my memory that this is Deuce, episode Deuce, 22. So little sidebar there. Not even 1 minute in and I already have a sidebar. So when we were in college, right, and this is back like between 95 and 99, we used to when we were like 18, 19, of course, and, drinking underage. There was this little like corner store where we would get our stuff or whatever. And my one college best friend, she used to like Heineken. I was not very much a malt liquor drinker, if you would. I was not like a beer drinker. I would have like Boone's Farm, if anybody remembers that. But my girl, she used to like Heinekens, and they used to have like, instead of like the regular 12 ounce or whatever, I guess 16 ounce bottle, whatever the average size bottle of beer is, they had like a 22 ounce of Heineken. And she used to always say, I'm going to go get me a deuce. So I thought about that with the 22nd episode. But hello. Welcome to another week. And just like that, we're already halfway through May. It just really seems like, honestly, since post 30, like since turning 30, like the years have just flown by. And certainly these last couple of years, it just seems like the time is going by faster and faster and faster. And I'm like, oh my God, like next Monday, my son is already going to be turning 14. And it's like, my goodness, it just keeps coming around faster and faster. So yeah, here we are already halfway through the month of May and half a month closer to our move to Atlanta. If you took a look around our house, really wouldn't look like we're getting ready to move anywhere, but any moment it will. I told David, I'm like, listen, we really got a chance to be at a place where like we have 2 or 3 days to spare, as opposed to like using every last minute of the last 2 or 3 days before we're moving out of here to get everything packed up. So we're still ahead of the 8 ball. So yeah, I'll have to keep you all posted on that. Anyway, so there were a few places I wanted to go today for today's episode, but then I had just an experience with my neighbors yesterday. Not like an angry experience or anything like that, but an experience with my neighbors. I shared about it a little bit in my Instagram stories, but it's just one of what has been many experiences with my neighbors. I'm not sure if maybe in an episode or two if I've alluded to them. I'd be surprised if I actually hadn't, because if you ask David, it's like I talk about them any opportunity I get to be like, let me tell you about the worst neighbors we've ever had. So we have these neighbors that when we moved into our place that we're in now, we moved here, it'll be 3 years this year, 3 years in November. So we moved in next to these neighbors, right? And the day that we decided to like visit this house and, all of that was just beautiful, quiet, like sunny day, like, everything looked fine. And so we're like, oh, this is great. We're going to move in. It's like, literally 1 minute, half a minute, around the corner from my condo that I own. So I'm like near my tenants if they need anything. So it's just a perfect location. So probably, I don't know. I'm not going to go from beginning to end, but somewhere, at least a couple of months in, I started to notice first all of the cars that they have. So we live in this townhouse community, right? Everybody has 2, maybe 3 cars, but on average 2, right? You get one in the driveway, and then you can like either block the driveway with your car or, park in the community park it or whatever like that. We also have garages, so you could do one in the driveway, and then, if your garage is clean enough, 1 car in the garage, right? So it's sort of designed for 2 cars. But they probably have like 6. They probably have like 6 cars, including like, work trucks, pickup trucks, motorcycles, a Mustang, like just, and then when they come home with a new car, I'm like, really? So because they have multiple cars, they obviously cannot fit 6 cars in a 2-car driveway, and they definitely don't use their garage because that's filled with a bunch of other crap. So they can only get one car in their driveway, one car blocking the driveway. So we have these community parking spaces, right? So like when, if we have guests come down, they can park like on the same block as opposed to parking like far away. So if anybody's familiar with townhouse communities, you know how it can go. Sometimes they can get super busy and it can be hard to find parking and, whatnot, but you may know the deal. So it's just like you can park in the guest spaces, or sometimes you have to like go a little bit further out to find, just public parking, if you would. So I started to notice like they always have, they're like 2 or 3 cars, like 3 car spaces on our block proper where you can have free community parking, right? And it seemed at first like everybody was sharing that. Like every once in a while, David would park there. If I was in the driveway and he knew he couldn't leave to move the car, whatever. So, or like I said, we'd have guests come down and they could park there, but it just seemed like everybody was able to share those 3 spaces. And then one day they had their 3 of their cars in the spots. Like they had like 2 pickup trucks and another car. And it's like, damn, they got all the spots full. And right away you think, geez, if they didn't have all those cars, they wouldn't have to take all those spots. But it's like, okay, so you kind of see that. And then after a while, you start to see that their cars are like always there. So then one day, you fast forward like a couple of months, one day I see like, so what happens is the type of person I am. I'm very competitive. I'm very, very, very competitive. If you don't know that about me, you have to know that about me. And so it's not so much like sports competitive. I'm not anybody's athlete, but just more about like, I want to be right. I definitely have like the I want to be right syndrome. I'm competitive maybe in like board games, stuff like that. So, but I'm also competitive when I start to see something that I, deem as unfair. Maybe competitive is not the right word here, but it's just what's coming up. So we'll go with it for the sake of conversation. But, I become competitive when I see something's unfair. And it's like, oh, no. I've got to make this right. So I'm a Scorpio sun sign, Leo rising, Taurus moon, but I've got a lot of Libra in me in one of my houses. I think in like my 4th or 5th house or something like that. And so the Libra in me is what drives like this perspective I have on what's fair and what's not fair. Like a lot of times I'll say, that's not fair. And then David always chimes in like, babe, life is not fair. And I know that, right? But I'm always just like, that's not fair. And I feel always driven by like justice and balance. And then when I had my chart read and learned like I had all this Libra in me, I'm like, okay, there you go. And then even though I'm Scorpio sun sign, I came into this world just behind Libra. So I don't think I'm on the cusp, but I definitely have the influence, right? So I can get a little competitive when it comes to what I think is fair. And so in the sense of, one day, like I go outside and I see one of the spots have opened, one of the 3 spots, the community spaces. And Dave and I are parked fine. Like I'm blocking the driveway. He's in the driveway, right? I come out, I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to take that space just because they need to share it and I'm going to take it and hold it. And then when I leave, hopefully like somebody else will take it, like, and not them because they don't share and it's not fair. Like instead of, they know they have all these cars, right? So instead of them going to the further out street parking, if you would, it's like, no, they're taking the 3 spaces for their convenience to accommodate for the life that they've created with a 2-car driveway. So when we had guests, when people would come to visit, all of this, again, they're parking further out, having to drag bags and do such. And it's like, no, you want to have these extra cars, you should park a little bit further away and still keep the space open for other people. Like we live in a community. This is not like your block. So I would tell David about this, right? David being from Brooklyn and like, New York City with its like just asinine parking. He's just like, whatever, it doesn't bother him. I grew up in the suburbs. So I grew up with like, everybody has their driveway or appropriate street parking. You know what I mean? Neighbors like get along. So it was like bothering me. And then again, I have all this like competitive justice in me, right? So I come out and I'm like, oh, fuck that. I'm going to go park my car, right? So I run back in the house. I run back in the house and I'm like, I'm going to go get my keys. So by the time I like go to get my keys, put some shoes on, you know what I mean? Like literally maybe 2 minutes tops because I'm like scurrying, like I got to get out there. I got to move the car because they weren't out there. In those 2 minutes, I don't know if they saw me come outside and do an about face or go back in. But in those 2 minutes, I saw them. Okay, so their two cars were there and one spot was open. In those 2 minutes, by the time I came back out, they were doing a thing where they moved. I saw them. They were doing exactly pretty much what I was about to do. Like they were coming out. I'm trying to like see the whole thing in my head, but it really doesn't matter because y'all can't see it. But they were like, they ended up taking like one of their cars that were, you know, the one car blocking the driveway. And then I just watched them. I came outside and I saw this in time. They popped in their car and then pulled their car in that spot, right? And then like later that evening or say like the next day, I saw them move that car out to bring in yet another car that they wanted to park in that space, right? So they had one car ready to go to fill in the space as soon as the other car pulled out of the space, okay? So they moved one car, had one car ready to pop in so that they still had the 3 spaces plus their driveway. And I'm like, no, they didn't. No, that was like the last thing I needed to see. I'm like, they're really setting this shit up so that nobody else can get the spot. Like they really have. Granted, I was going to do the same thing to hold the spot, if you would, you know, out of fairness. But when I saw the setup of like, they had like the mom come out, say it's like a mom, a husband, and like 3 kids and all this. Older kids, you know, so like 20s, you know, like that. So older kids, the kids work, have jobs, like all that stuff. So the mom is moving, is like has the car ready to pull in. And then like one of the sons is pulling the car out. Mom pops the truck in. She goes back to the house. And I'm sitting there fucking flabbergasted. Like, no, they didn't. Like, no, they didn't. And that just really, really burned me. So that was the main thing. Like first noticing the cars. And it infuriated me. I was like, it's so unfair. Like nobody else can park there. There was like one day, you know, again, David and I can make it work. But it was like one day, for whatever reason, like I didn't want to block the driveway. I think David might need to get out. So I was like, all right, let me see if I can catch one of those 3 spots. Of course I couldn't. I had to park far away, you know, dragging whatever. And I was just like, oh, this is really ridiculous. Like, this is crazy. So I did end up complaining to our landlords. And I was like, listen, this cannot, you know, be right or fair. And they were like, no. So our landlords, you know, used to own this place. So they used to live here. And they had those neighbors too. And when we told them about it, they were like, oh, yeah, no. When we first moved here, they started with like just their 2 or 3 cars and then just slowly started adding to their collection. And it was ridiculous. And then they moved out and we moved in. Of course, they didn't tell us about the neighbors, but, you know, hey. So we complained. We're like, hey, is there anything like, can you say something to like the HOA? Like, it's just really not right. And so, you know, our landlord's like, oh, yeah, we'll make a complaint to the HOA. They sent an email, had me copied on the email. You know, I'm just kind of explaining like what I saw. And then the HOA is like, well, the most we can do is like send them a complaint, but like we can't formally like file, you know, any like grievances or, you know what I mean? Like write them up or whatever the HOA would do. They're like, we can just file a complaint like, hey, somebody in the neighborhood, you know, is not happy with your parking situation. But they're like, but really, it is community parking. And so technically, while their strategy is jacked up, they have the right to park there. Like we can't enforce community parking, if you would. And it's like, ain't that some shit? Ain't that some shit? So there's the car thing, right? Then with townhouse communities, the driveways are a little closer to each other. And so everybody has to maintain their little space. And, you know, with trash and all of that, get a lot of their carryover trash because they just kind of put their trash out like any which way, you know, like in the morning sometimes, and they'll have a lot because it's a lot of them in the house. And so, you know what I mean? Like they'll just have like a lot of trash and it'll just kind of come over and I'll come out. I'm like, oh my God. And then we're not anybody's perfect eaters, but we try to watch what we eat. It's like fucking Burger King wrappers and McDonald's wrappers and no judgment, no judgment, but we just, we don't eat that. And so it's just like Taco Bell and shit. And it's like, oh my God, like all these wrappers and bags and, in our yard. And it's just like, dang, I mean, it'd be one thing if that was like our trash, but it's like not. And then it's like trash of shit we don't even eat, but whatever. Okay. So there's just, I'm not going to get into every single solitary thing because I'd have us here for the rest of the week airing my grievances, and I'm not going to do that. But just giving y'all some insight into like what has been the experience of being next door to the neighbors. The one thing, I was going to say they're not super noisy, but they are, because that is what happened yesterday that sparked this podcast episode. So yesterday, and just super quick, when I say not noisy, so we're in between two sets of neighbors. There's them with all the cars, and then there's these, our neighbors to the other side of us who are just like we've been trying to figure it out, but I think it's like two young, like 20-something-year-old girls, like maybe just out of college or something like that, renting a place together. So what they do is like they party, you know what I mean? And like they can be like loud with the music sometimes, and then like one day they came over and they were like, oh, we're getting ready to throw like a big party this weekend. And they were like, we just wanted to let you know. And so we were like, okay, thanks for letting us know. But hey, like during the week, like when you're blasting the music, like it's all good. We all have to like coexist, but we do have a kid who needs to like shut it down at like a certain time. And sometimes the kid comes to us because Voss will come to us like, Ma, their music is like way too loud. So we told them that, and they were like, oh my God, we didn't even realize. And you don't, like when you're 20, you're just listening to what you're not thinking about anybody else, right? So they're like, oh my God, we had no idea. Thanks for letting us know. And sure enough, like during the week, they have some moments here and there, but they responded to that. We didn't bitch about the big party that they've had. They've had like another one since then. It's been like all good, coexisting, right? So the other ones with all the cars, they're not so noisy in terms of like always listening to stuff loud, but they just do shit like loud. And so this is like what happened yesterday. So again, David being from the city and me being from the suburb, when it's like a Saturday or Sunday morning, I'm like, the world should be quiet. Should be, right? Until at least like 9 on a Saturday, give or take landscapers, things like that. But I'm like, everybody works so hard Monday through Friday. And, we have a 9 to 5 system here in this country. So we all know that people are going to be up and moving, by 6:37. So you'll hear cars, you'll hear people, you'll hear delivery trucks. You'll just hear the world moving around like 7 or 8 during the weekday because life is moving around. But I'm like on Saturdays and Sundays, in my head, that's the day like people rest or take it easy or sleep in or do whatever. So again, even on a Saturday, landscaper, stuff like that. But Sunday is the day of rest, right? Man, I'm just laying in the bed yesterday morning. It's like 8, I'm just kind of like waking up and, just kind of like quiet morning in the bed. And then I just hear this like super loud, like engine, like sports car type engine. And it's just loud, engine's revving. I'm like, this has got to be like one of their friends, right? Because in this time, over these 3 years, they'll have people come by and, whatever, and their friends will come and like to visit them and just completely like block our driveway. Like I literally was in my window one day and watched one of their dudes literally pull into our driveway, tail of the car hanging out over the sidewalk because they pulled up behind my car, turned the car off, jumped out, and then walked up to the door. And I'm screaming through the window, no, 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 you cannot do that. You cannot do that. And fortunately, the neighbor, I guess, was in the door, waiting for his friend to come. So he popped out like, oh, yeah, you can't do that. You got to move your car. But I'm like, who does that? Like, who just pulls up and just blocks people's car and just was going to walk away? Like, who does that? I don't understand. I don't understand. So like, so you hear the loud car and I'm like, it's got to be one of their friends. Sure enough, I look out the window, the car is like in front of their driveway. Then they start talking all loud, hey, just whatever. And I'm like, it's 8:00 in the morning on a Sunday, but fine, whatever. Then that car pulls off, and then probably within the hour, they're just pulling out all types of shit. They're like always doing something. They're like always fixing their driveway. So I think they have like a family contracting business, right? So that's some of the trucks and stuff that they have. They have like a family contracting business, which I think is pretty cool. It's like father and son go out and work this business. You know what I mean? They drive, they do all of this stuff. So I don't knock them for working hard. I don't knock them for having their own business. And here's the thing, like when we have to speak to them, they're nice people. They're just shitty neighbors. They're just shitty neighbors, like shitty. They need to have like farmland and acres where they can just put all their cars and all their bullshit and all their stuff or whatever. And they speak much more to Dave than they speak to me. They just give me the smile because I'm sure they've heard me bitching and moaning, about them. But anyway, so they're contractors. And so, okay, I told myself this again. This was not going to be a total episode about venting. And I promise this is going to tie into a life lesson. But here we are. So here I am, letting it all go. So I might feel a little bit all over the place, but again, I'm going to bring it all back. So with them being contractors, the thing that they did last summer that absolutely drove me off the wall. So first they have the 6 cars, right? Then one day I come home and there's a big ass dumpster bin in their driveway, like a big ass dumpster bin, like commercial dumpster bin, like in the driveway, filled to the brim with crap, like old, drywall and like old couches. And I'm like, holy shit, like I guess part of their work and their contracting is they're probably like, oh, hey, we'll haul the old stuff away, for whatever it is we're going to build. We live in a townhouse community. And I know from suburb living, you're not supposed to have shit like that, like in the neighborhood. That shit's supposed to be stored somewhere with a commercial. If you have a commercial thing like that, it's supposed to be in a commercial space. So I'm like, oh my God. So now they have junk and all types of shits from wherever, you know what I mean? Which opens the door to whatever as far as like energy and stuff and whatever may be trapped with that. And that shit's sitting in the driveway so that when you come outside, that's the first thing you see, and it's like, what the fuck, right? So that was there. Then they took it and moved it to one of those 3 community spots and just left it there. And I'm like, I cannot be the only one who sees this shit. Like, I don't understand how they keep getting away with all this shit. And then eventually, this was last summer, eventually the city did come by and put like a tow sticker on the thing. And it was like, this will be towed, and I guess it was like they had, the tow sticker was like a warning. And I was like, good, I hope that shit gets towed. Like they finally need to learn their lesson. And then sure enough, and it sat there with the tow sticker on it for like 2 days. And I'm like, all right, good. The city's coming. The city's coming. The city's coming. It's going to take that thing away. I come outside like 3 days later. They got their pickup truck hooked up to it. And then they moved it back from the street back into their driveway. And they had to navigate backing it up into the driveway. So they had the pickup truck, this big ass commercial dumpster hooked to the back of the pickup truck. They're trying to navigate it in, backing it in to the driveway. So that was a whole lot of noise. And, oh, you got to get it over this way. I was just like, oh my fucking God. So then we're sitting here next to this dumpster, in the driveway, right? Mind you, because, sometimes they don't dispose of their trash properly. Like sometimes they would have like all their trash, I guess, like piled up right next to their garage space or whatever. And on a hot summer day, you'd come out and it would just smell like trash, or like we get like squirrel crossover because squirrels were like going into their trash and then sitting on our steps with whatever like trash they collected. Like it's really been a thing. So they had this dumpster thing. So coming back to yesterday, the dumpster's in the driveway. And then I guess they start doing like some work like on their driveway, like they're fixing up whatever their little strip of land or whatever. So you just hear stuff being thrown. You hear just, them yelling to each other all by like 9:30, right? They're throwing stuff in and out the dumpster. Like then the whole family's coming out. Somebody out there has the loudest sneeze in the world. So from like 9 to like 7, because they were working with like cinder blocks, like they were doing all this stuff. So I guess it was like dusty. All you hear is achoo, achoo. Like you just hear this super loud sneeze and it's like annoying and it's just noise all day. They have that going. And then the one son's like in and out, revving up his Mustang engine. I mean, all day, y'all, all day. So Dave is out of town and then he gets back, in the early afternoon or whatever. He was out of town for the evening for a family member who graduated from college. So he gets back, he parks his car in front of the driveway. I guess they're going to get ready to pull the dumpster out, at some point. They have the pickup truck that they connect to the dumpster hanging out of the driveway because the driveway is too short rather, to hold the pickup truck and the dumpster, right? So they have the pickup truck coming out of the driveway, turned at an angle where it's kind of blocking Dave's car. So I'm relaxing. Dave's down here recording his podcast, and then just start hearing this loud knocking on the door, right? And every once in a while, I will admit, I'm that human yoga teacher that if somebody knocks on the door randomly on a Sunday afternoon, I might not get up to answer the door. I'm like, if I don't know that you're coming over or we're not expecting guests, I'm not going to just answer the door. It's like a phone call sometimes. When you look at the number, you're like, I don't know this number. I'm not picking it up. So they knocked one time, and I'm like, oh, all right, maybe it's just whatever. Sometimes they knock and drop off stuff, solicitors and stuff like that, right? So I was like, oh, maybe it's that. Then they knock again super hard. I'm like relaxing on the couch, enjoying my Sunday. Come to the door. I'm like, hey, what's up? They're like, oh, we got to pull the thing out and we don't want to hit his car. So can you have him move his car? And I'm like, oh my God. So because of I cannot describe it, but it just looked like I would have just gone out and moved the car, but it was just so much going on that I was just like, I can't deal. So I had to come down, get David from recording his own podcast and say, dude, they need you to move the car. I'm grumbling because I'm like, if they weren't doing the most, they wouldn't have to have you move the car. Like, your car is parked where your car can be parked. They're doing the most, but hey, they were considerate enough to say, move the car so we don't hit it. It took me everything not to say, y'all are doing too fucking much. You shouldn't be in any kind of position to hit his car, but whatever. So Dave moves the car. They're going on and on. And it was so funny because when he was out there moving the car, he did end up getting, one of the community spots because they had to move the pickup truck to connect it with the dumpster. So he snuck into that spot. And there's another lady who lives at the corner. And I think she's been there a while too. And so she was out there. We've only ever seen her in passing. We've never spoke to her. But in that moment, she was outside as Dave was parking his car. So he gets out and he told me that she came up to him and said, it's just all that necessary. And he's like, what? He's like, she's like, they just been making noise all day. And she's like, and it just won't stop. And it just seems so unnecessary and so disruptive. And it's Sunday. And so she's like, oh, hey, I've seen you around, but by the way, where do you live? He's like, I actually live right next to them. She's like, oh my God, like, how do you deal? You must complain about them all the time. And he's like, oh, not so much me, but my fiance does, like, all the time. She's not happy with them. And she's like, I wouldn't be either. They're just disruptive. And they are. And so there's that. And then the other thing I'm going to vent about super quick is their dogs. So when we moved in, they had this one, I kept calling it an Akita, but I think it's actually an Alaskan Husky, but it's one of those beautiful white with like grayish coat spots, not full white and gray, but the beautiful like fluffy white with the blue eyes and the pointy ear. Like I thought, but someone told me an Akita has like a black tongue. I don't think this dog has a black tongue. So it's just one of those beautiful, beautiful dogs. And when we first moved in, I'd see it every once in a while, maybe just standing, on the steps, not like out walking around or anything, just standing on the steps. But he would always just look, you know what I mean? And just kind of look at us, wag his tail and keep it moving. But just a beautiful dog. So as we're getting, we noticed that dog when we first moved in. So, over the time that we're here, as we're getting adjusted to the neighborhood, we go out, you walk your dog, because we have our little Frenchie. So we walk Frenchie, and then anybody who has a dog, in the neighborhood, like you may, that you start to see sort of the same people all the time. So like if you walk the dog at a certain time, it's us walking Frenchie, and then the dude who walks like his dog, and the older woman who walks her dog, and you sort of start to see the same people, as you're walking dogs. And one day it hit me, I said, Dave, I have never seen them walk that dog. I've never seen them put the dog on a leash and walk the dog. I'm like, what are they doing with the dog? Now, when I would see the dog, he didn't look scruffy. He didn't look uncared for. He looked very beautiful. I saw them washing the dog one day, so they care for it in that way. But I'm like, but they never walk it. Well, I got the answer to my question one day. So one day I came out in the morning, and the one sister is standing at the top of the steps. The dog is on a retractable leash. She's standing on the steps, just there, kind of leaning in the doorway. The dog is on a retractable leash in the little strip of land in the driveway. He could only go as far as that leash would take him. She let him do his thing, or her thing if it's a girl dog, and came back in the house. And I said, oh shit, that's how they walk the dog? They just put the poor thing, and it's a big dog, and I was like, they put the poor thing on a retractable leash, does whatever he can do in that little space, and then he comes back. And then he's in the house all the time. Every once in a while, they let the dog out on like the deck And again, if you're familiar with townhouse communities, so we have like the deck off the kitchen, and then we have a walkout basement space, right? And so when you walk out the basement space, like a little bit of yard space, not super huge, but enough to have like a grill and maybe like some chair, just a little setup. We have the fence, so it's a little fenced in walkout space. Good if you just need to let the dog out, say like it's raining or it's super cold and you just need to let him out to go like pee or something real quick, right? Good for that, right? And good for us with Frenchie, because for Frenchie, our dog, she's little enough that actually could be all the space that she needs, like just for like a walk around, get a stretch, sit outside. Like that's all the space that she really needs. But so some days we'll do that. Again, if it's cold, if it's rainy, and it's just like, oh. But most of the times we put her on a leash, we give her a good stretch because she's a dog. So they'll either let that dog on the deck or they just let him go in the little space. So it's either that or the little strip of yard in the front driveway. So there was that dog. Then somewhere over the last year, along with the dumpster that they got some other big, super aggressive dog. It's not a pit bull, but it's one of those dogs with like a big head, and it just looks like you don't want to be alone in the street with that dog, right? And so, I don't think I talked about this, but like you would just hear it, and like sometimes they'd have the dog out, like if they're working on stuff in the driveway, and the dog would be out kind of like tied up to a tree with a chain, like they had to chain it because it was like that aggressive. And in my head, I'm like, you don't walk the damn one dog. Why do you have another? Why? It's inhumane to the dogs, to me, you know? So, one day I go out. So this is like last winter. I go out to walk Frenchie. Usually I come out the front door, but this time I came out the garage. And we're just going. And immediately I start to hear the aggressive barking. And I quickly look over, and the dude's girlfriend is like holding the dog. But you know how it's like you can see all of your life flash in front of you in like a moment? I saw this whole thing happening. I'm like, she's not going to be able to hold that dog. That dog is going to come for me and Frenchie. And sure enough, she's like trying to hold the dog back. The fucking dog breaks off, runs after, I see it coming, runs after me. Frenchie is older, really kind of deaf and really kind of blind. Like she's has beautiful energy, but she's also just kind of there. She's just like, I have no idea what's happening. So all of this is running through my mind. So I'm thinking this dog is going to fucking kill my dog. And my dog has no idea what's going on. So I try to scramble. The dog is coming after me and Frenchie. I try to scramble to get Frenchie. I get all tangled up in the leash. Next thing I know, I'm on the fucking ground. Like Frenchie's just still there in my hand somehow hanging off the leash. We all got tangled up in each other, but she ended up standing. I ended up on the ground. The dog was just like near me. But by the time it got near me, I guess the brother must have run out of the house and heard what was going on and got the dog. I was embarrassed because I fell in the street at like 5 o'clock, and I'm like, somebody saw this whole thing happen, I'm sure. I was embarrassed. I was shocked. I was hurt. My knee was scraped up super badly. I had to like limp for like a couple of days. It hurt so bad. I fell like right on my knee. And then I just went back in the house like just hysterical, like, David, this is ridiculous. I really wanted to file a complaint about the dog because I'm like, you know what? If that were like a kid, that were Voss might have not known what to do. If that were like an old lady who took the spill that I took, her body might not have been able to really sustain that fall. She might have broken a hip or something like that, or her knee or something. And I'm just like, Dave, they don't walk that dog. And because they don't walk it in my head, that's why the dog is 10 times more aggressive than it probably already is, because it cannot discharge its energy. And then why is somebody holding the dog that can't manage the dog, right? So I'm like, I want to file a complaint. I want to call animal control. And Dave's like, listen, Rachel, let's just, let's not call anybody on them. You know what I mean? Like, let's not tell. And I'm like, no, but it's not about telling. It's about what's right. So Dave's just like, listen, I'll go talk to them. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. And I was pissed. I really wanted to file a complaint. But then I was just like, all right, fine. Dave went to go talk to them. They apologized profusely. And in their apology, they said, we told the women in our family not to hold the dog. So why was she out there holding it? You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, they told themselves, if I wanted to take that information and like sue them, I could. Like, they said this to us. And we saw what happened. So now they have 2 dogs in that house. The husky and this dog whose name is damn Rocky, because they're always like, Rocky, stop Rocky, right? And I'm like, why do you have Rocky, right? So now they'll let the husky out, and then they'll just let Rocky out on the deck and in the little backyard space. They never walk Rocky. They never walk this aggressive dog, right? One day, like, Frenchie's out in the little backyard space, like, doing her thing, and I'm standing out there with her. Our fences sort of not touch, but, our fences are close to each other, our fence and their fence. Somehow Rocky got herself in that space in between the fence. Our fence, it's wood, so anybody that has a wood fence, and this is not an older property, but I think it was like built in like 94. So I'm sure our owners probably never, fixed the fence in the whole time. So the wood is giving a little bit, like leaning a little bit on the one side, stuff that because we're renting, we're like, we can just live with it. We're not like investing in fixing a fence. So the fence is leaning a little bit. And then I guess Rocky senses Frenchie and she starts to try to peek through the cracks. And she like starts butting her head against the wood, like, trying to get to Frenchie. So again, Frenchie has no idea her life is in danger. So I'm like, Frenchie, come on, Frenchie. So I grab her and bring her back inside, but I'm looking at that fence shaking and I'm like, Dave, that dog was aggressive enough because it's an animal. You know what I mean? Like this, it's an instinctive animal, like it hunts or whatever, I'm like, that thing is aggressive enough. It could have, bust the fence down, and got Frenchie. Like, to me, this dog is dangerous. I don't care for the dog. And it's just on top of everything else, I'm just like, ugh. So they have the dog. They're making all this noise yesterday. They do all the shit with the cars. And then that's just, you know what I mean? Again, that's just the icing on the cake. So, for the better part of like these, past 2.5, almost 3 years, the minute I started getting hip to these crazy neighbors, I would just like complain, like, oh my God, I can't stand them. Oh my God, I wish you would say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, oh, mind you, and I'm going to go ahead and tell on Dave too. He came home one day this past week and when he came in the house, he's like, Rachel, you didn't hear me? I'm like, no, what happened? He's like, pulled up, the sister's holding the dog. And he's like, and I just saw it all happen. And he's like, I got out the car and I just knew that dog was going to get off the leash. The sister, come to find out, he said, actually, the dog wasn't even on the leash. The dog was between the sister's legs. Like she was trying to hold the dog with her legs. So he's like, I saw it. He's like, I knew I was going to pull up and I knew that dog was going to come after me. He said, sure enough, I pulled up. I got out the car. He's like, and the minute I got out the car, Rocky like took off from her legs, ran over to him, and poor Dave said he jumped up on the trunk of his car and sat there until the brother came out and got him. And I'm just like, again, if this dog already attacked or went to attack one person and the girlfriend couldn't hold him, and you said the woman in the family shouldn't be holding the dog, then why is the sister out there with the freaking dog between her legs and no leash? Like, what the fuck is going on here? And I'm like, Dave, I really want to complain. Like, again, somebody could get hurt, and then what? And then what? And I'm usually not a tattletale, if you would, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just like, this is different. This is like principle, and I'm very much a woman of principle. So he's like, no. And I'm like, well, all right, well, if I have it my way, they'll definitely be getting an anonymous complaint before we move out of here. So for the better part of 2 years, I can't stand the neighbors. They just get on my nerves, and I'm just fussing. I just want to get the fuck out of here. And so I have shared, especially in the episode where I revealed we were moving to Atlanta, when we were getting to the point where, so our lease was initially like it was like year to year. But then after the second year, we renewed, which was last November. Going into the third year of being here, we told the landlords we wanted to go month to month, and they told us the same because they were like, yeah, eventually we want to sell it. And we're like, oh, that's fine because we want to move out of here anyway. So we were thinking about that, but I sort of kickstarted the process a little bit earlier than Dave had intended, right? But I was just fed up with the neighbors. So we start like last October. And I just start looking at places like, and then began like the housing journey. And then it was like, I thought we were going to get this place. So I was like, tell the landlords we're moving out. Then we didn't get the place. And then the landlords were like, oh no, we're definitely selling the place now. You know what I mean? So it was just like, oh, so David was just kind of like, I just want to keep us under the radar until we know what we're doing. But as everything would align and we would soon see, we were meant to move to Atlanta anyway. So that's that. But in that space of when I started really looking for places, like the pressure was on because it was just like, David, I can't stand them. Like they're just spread out too much. They're trash. They're cars. They're this, they're that. Like I can't, I want to get away. And, so it was just a lot of pressure, and me just complaining, right? And I would try so hard not to. When I would see them, though, right, I try to smile and be pleasant, but again, I think they could feel my vibe. So we would just do like the kind of fake smile and wave thing. But Dave, they would like actually have a conversation. I would also do passive aggressive shit, again, because our spaces are close enough to each other. Like, so say like we have the door to our deck open, just kind of cracked open and get some air. Like, I would like stand in the doorway and intentionally talk loudly about, they have no business having that dog. That fucking dog is dangerous. Da, 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 da. In the hopes that my voice would carry over to them. I know that's so passive aggressive. And then I would see them be like, hey, but whatever. So shit hit the fan in like December, and I shared this in an episode where it was just, the pressure was tight. David was just under a lot of pressure. I didn't realize like how much I was putting on him, to be very honest, and how much he's just trying to carry the load, and I'm just like fussing and all of this stuff. He got this reading we talked about, and the reading was like, yeah, I don't know if y'all need to be together. And I'm like, no, that's not true either. Dave got this reading, and it was like it just like freaked me out. And that I took that reading that he got as like, Rachel, you need to chill the fuck out. Like, you need to chill the fuck out. And so I did. So at the top of the new year, I made a conscious choice. Like, I'm just going to take the pressure off of looking for a place. I'm going to take the pressure because we're trying to get pregnant too. So I'm like, I'm going to take the pressure off trying to get pregnant. Like, there was just a lot of pressure. Just everything. And then me complaining just wasn't helping. So I decided, really made a conscious effort at the top of this year, that I'm going to shift my narrative. I'm going to shift my perspective. I'm going to stop complaining about this house, because there are things in this house I didn't like. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I don't like this house. I don't like these fucking neighbors. Like, I was definitely that person. So then I'm like, nope. Even if I don't love this house, and I definitely don't love my neighbors, right? This house is the first house that David and I lived in together. Like, this is the house where we started our life together. And it will always be our first home, good, bad, or indifferent. And when I really thought about that, just really let myself sit in that space, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be grateful for this home, because again, it will always be our first home. And that's sort of the beauty of it, right? Like, we have our parents, or maybe older couples in our family, or even younger couples that are like, yeah, our first place was like some, water bug infested apartment, or, you know what I mean? Just whatever it is. But like, everybody has like their starting place, right? And, God willing, like, that's what makes the relationship beautiful, because you have these like shared experiences of like living in like the not so cool place, but you made it through together. So I decided to shift my narrative. I decided to shift my perspective, and I would still fuss here and there, just, when they would just do something absolutely egregious like yesterday, but I stopped complaining about the cars. I stopped like saying anything about it. I just said, I'm going to let them live. I'm going to let them take all the spaces. And to this day, nobody else gets to park in that spot. Nobody. They constantly take the 3 spots. Like I said, David was only able to get in there yesterday because they had to move the one car to be a part of all the shit that they were doing. But nobody else parks there. And I guess because we're newer to the block, like most of the people who are here were people that were here when we moved in. I guess we're just now getting hip. So now I realize, I'm like, oh, okay. Everybody else on the block must just be used to their shit and is just dealing, which to me is asinine. I'm like, you should say something, but whatever. Because if they don't know or nobody says anything, they're just going to keep doing them. But the thing that I realized is like, they're just going to keep doing them regardless. So let me just shift my shit. So I stopped complaining about the cars. Try to smile at them. I still don't like Rocky. I don't like Rocky. Like, when I see her, I'm like, ugh, or him. It's funny, I call the one dog him, and I don't know why I keep thinking Rocky's a her, but found out Rocky's a him. Because yesterday, in all their madness, I went out to go get my oat milk chai latte, and I stepped at the house and was met with Rocky Grr, from their steps next door, sitting with the sister again. But then the brother was out there, thankfully. And so the brother's like, Rocky, chill out, Rocky, chill out. So I came back, and then Rocky's still in the steps, and then I got out the car, and Rocky's barking like a madman, as I come out the car, and then the brother's like, hey, Rocky, chill out, chill out. And then he says to me like, hey, if you guys would be open to it, I'd love to like just bring Rocky over to meet you, because his bark is bigger than his bite. And I'm like, okay, that's something I could be open to. I'm like, it's just the dog freaks me out, man. He's like, no, he's not that bad. If you would just like, so again, like, nice guy, like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, but you're bad neighbors. And I'm like, sure, yeah, we can make that happen. We'll see. So, so I went in the house, and yeah, so just the main thing I fuss about is Rocky. But honestly, Rocky's a pain in my ass as the person who has to live next to Rocky, but I also feel bad for those dogs. I really feel bad for those dogs. And anybody who's a dog person or dog owner, I know you are feeling me. Like, again, my dog, Frenchie, is no bigger than maybe 15 pounds, maybe, so she can have a smaller space because she gets kind of like, she does like one little lap and then she gets, smaller bones, smaller dog. They get like a little winded. So she'll come back in from like walking around outside, 2 or 3 times. And then she's like, all right, I'm asleep for the rest of the afternoon. But again, bigger dogs, bigger bones, bigger joints, just more joint, all of that. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they need to run. And I just feel bad that they have nothing but the space in their house, townhouse space. And then at least the husky they were letting out in the front. I guess again they let Rocky out here and there, but because he's so aggressive, they don't let him hang out in the front. They don't walk him in the little strip of land. So Rocky definitely just runs up and down the deck, the steps between the deck and the backyard space. Poops all over the deck, the stairs, the backyard. They just leave it. So when I come out on my deck for a cup of tea or to get a fresh, some fresh air, I look over and, oh, hey, poop. So it's just like, but in general, I stopped complaining. I was like, I'm going to shift my perspective. And I promise you, when I really made the effort to do that, you could definitely feel a release of the pressure in this house. You could feel a release of the pressure between me and David. I could feel a release of internal pressure on myself. Like it definitely, like the air was let out of the room, but like in a really good way. You know what I mean? And then sure enough, when I'm moving in this space of gratitude and I'm, trying not to complain outside of Rocky, we get my brother tells me, oh, hey, you should check out this private school in Atlanta for Voss. We're like, okay, we'll check it out. And then, things start to line up and then boom, here we are. Voss gets into this private school and we're moving to Atlanta, right? And it feels aligned. It doesn't feel like outside of the effort of, Voss having had to apply for the school, just what comes. You have to put in the effort for whatever it is you want to manifest. You don't just think it and think it will come. Like, yes, if the mind can conceive something, it can be achieved, absolutely. But between the thought and the achieving is the work. Okay. So, although there is like, oh, I thought about this person and they called me, you know what I mean? Like that type of stuff. But in terms of like manifesting's work, and that's for a different episode. So we did our effort, but we just did it being totally open, you know what I mean? Like, and then everything just worked out smoothly. And now we're preparing to move to Atlanta next month. I'm definitely like, dude, single family house from here on out, man. I cannot be attached to anybody if we can help it. Or, if we do, move into another townhouse community, they're like, oh, I don't know. We can't have our decks close or whatever it is, but we're definitely looking at the single family route. So keep us in thoughts and prayers for that one, that will work out, because I'm like, I cannot. But it was a lesson. It is a lesson. You know what I mean? And whatever the situation is, that's the bad neighbors in your life, right? Like, so are you in a job that you don't love, but it's helping to pay the bills, right? Are you in a relationship that, there's still something there is what I want to say. So if it's like totally unhealthy, get the hell out of there, obviously. But, if it's a situation where it's like, hey, we're just not like on the same page, or, you know what I mean? Like we love each other, but something's off. Like, like if you're just in these different types of situations where it feels like that, where it feels tight and it feels like there's pressure, and you are noticing that all you're doing is like complaining all the time, right? Like, how can you shift that to make the situation have a little more ease? So when I was in yoga teacher training and I was in my corporate job at the time, like I was like, oh, I just want to get out of here. But even then I wasn't sure that I wanted to like go off and teach and become an entrepreneur. I just was like, I don't like my corporate job, right? My yoga teacher always says to this day, the fastest way out of a situation is to have gratitude while you're in the situation, So no, you don't love what you do. You feel off purpose, but that job is helping you pay for this yoga teacher training. That job is allowing you to do, whatever it is that you can do. So how can you find gratitude for that? The more you stay in that space of gratitude, the more things will ease up. But if you're in that space of tightness and negativity and complaining all the time, you're just going to get more of that. And it's one of those things like being present, right? That sounds so simple in theory, but it's actually really hard to apply, Like when you're in the middle of a situation, like living next to some funky neighbors, and it's like, yo, I just want to be anywhere but here. Like, how do you just say, okay, but I'm just going to be grateful for this, right? Like, it's so much easier said than done. But when I made the conscious effort to do that in my mind, I saw different results. I saw different results in my relationship, in my home, just in general, And again, now we have this big new exciting venture in front of us. And, it was meant to happen and all this stuff, right? That's what the stars were aligning for. But in my human everyday experience, it's like, okay, when I decided to step back, the universe just did its thing, and in a much bigger way than I could have ever conceived. And so when I say that in a relationship, I can relate that to even David and I. We have a beautiful relationship. We have a beautiful rapport. The foundation of our relationship is friendship. And that's what we always come back to. We're always mindful to protect the friendship. If we can respect each other as friends, it's just a beautiful way to go from there. So we have this beautiful relationship and foundation. But we were in that space of December, and it was just tight, like we were bumping heads all the time. We weren't communicating well. We were arguing a lot, like, you know what I mean? And it wasn't like it was an unhealthy situation that I needed to get out of. David wasn't abusing me or being harmful to Voss or Frenchie. It was just like we just could not get on the same page. Doesn't mean that David didn't have his own work and his own stuff he had to do, but right, loves, all we can control in each and every moment is ourselves, how we react to things, how we speak about things, how we respond to what we're feeling emotionally. That's all we have control over. And each and every moment, we only ever have control over ourselves. And so I went from, pointing the finger at David, like, you need to fix this and you need to do this and what are we doing? To looking at myself of like, okay, how can I make this a more peaceful home, right? Like, what can I do? And I just started focus on peaceful home, peaceful Ray, Ray for Rachel, peaceful me, peaceful relationship. And again, you just started to feel the air come out of the room, and it's just been smoother sailing than since then. It doesn't mean Dave and I don't bump heads from time to time or have our moments, but just in general, we really feel like we found a groove. And now things, instead of feeling like they're kind of working against each other, now it feels like things are starting to flow. So I share this story about my bad neighbors, and thank you for letting me vent about that. Again, there's so much more I could have said, but I don't want to have y'all here for the rest of the year. But thinking about the bad neighbor situation in your life, right? Whatever that is, can you step back and shift your perspective, even in the smallest of ways? Even if that means, something makes you tighten your face. Can you just learn to relax your face? Can you invite a smile instead of a frown? Like some small way that you can make a shift that will start to open the door for bigger shifts, and then to open the door for the change you're really seeking in your life, whether it's more peace in your relationship, whether it's finding a more purposeful career path, but when you're in that space of tightness and fussing and complaining and not happy, you're not leaving room for the mind to be creative, to have thought, to get clarity. Your mind is just wrapped around what you don't like and what isn't working. And, the more we focus on that, the more we're going to attract that. So I say all of this to say, what can you do to shift the perspective in your life? Or is there a situation in your life, situations in your life maybe even, that would benefit from you changing your perspective? So I invite you to look into that. And, if you know how to reach me, Instagram, Rachel Voss Yoga, email, rachelvossyoga@gmail.com. That will be changing to an official formal email in a couple of months as I work through my website redesign. But I'd love to hear from you, and just hear about a situation in your life that required you to change perspective. I'd really love to hear from that. If you take yoga classes with me, I'd love for you to share that. But just think about that. Really think about that. All right. So we're getting up on this hour. As I say with every episode, I really plan for this just to be a half an hour, but as always, here we are. So let's get ready to close it out with a passage. Today's reading will be from Melody Beattie's Journey to the Heart, Daily Meditations on the Path to Freeing Your Soul. And when I opened it up, I was like, all right, I need the perfect passage. The first passage I flipped to, I was like, and then closed the book again, opened it up, and I was like, thank you. Here we go. So wherever you are, let's just pause and take a beautiful deep breath in and exhale out. Doing that again, taking a deep breath in, exhale out. Just maybe noticing where you might be experiencing any tension in your body at this moment, and just seeing if you can soften that with the breath. So if you're holding your jawline tight, or maybe you have the eyes closed and you're squeezing the eyes shut, or maybe have your shoulders up by your ears, but wherever you might feel tense or tight, take another breath in, and with your exhale, just feel that tension releasing, that tightness releasing. And keep breathing as much as you need to soften that tightness. And this passage that I'll share is called Change Your Perspective. Sometimes a slight difference in where we stand can dramatically change how we see things. One morning, shortly after sunrise, I climbed to the top of a mesa in Sedona. I'd been there the day before, staring at the shapes and forms of the other mesas and gazing down upon the city. Now this morning I sat in a different place to meditate and to look around. The spot where I sat this day was only a few feet from where I'd sat before, but the view looked entirely different. I saw different shapes and forms in the mesas. I saw a different view of the city, the world below. We often need to change our position so we can see things differently. We don't have to make a dramatic change. We just need to move around a little. Perhaps an unresolved issue is blocking our vision, blocking us from seeing the beauty that's there. Maybe a bit of anger or self-contempt is interfering with our vision. Maybe the changes we need to make are minor, much less than we thought. Maybe we simply need to look at whatever we are viewing without fear, to change our mood and see it with the eyes of love. Take a break, move around, learn to change your perspective. Maybe you don't need to change what you're looking at. You just need to change where you stand. Oh, and I love that because, again, when I relate it back to my situation, I kept focusing on this huge change of like, we've got to get that out of this entire house. Like, we got to get out of here. And even though eventually we did have to move out because that was the plan for the landlords and for us, we've kind of just maxed out this space here. But it wasn't the big overhaul of moving that was needed. It was me making a conscious choice within myself and in my mind to just have ease, to just not complain, to just not focus on the things that made me angry or upset. And then it even said, looking, the passage says, maybe we simply need to look at whatever we are viewing without fear to change our mood and see it with the eyes of love. So even thinking about that and Rocky, like, I don't like Rocky. I don't. I don't like big aggressive dogs. Like, I'm not a super scary dog person, but if a dog invokes fear in me, I'm like, I don't like you. But the compassion, right? Looking through the eyes of love, the compassion that I have for Rocky is like, dang, I feel bad for, I don't like Rocky. I don't want to be in a room alone with Rocky, but I feel bad for Rocky, right? I feel bad that Rocky doesn't have more room to run around and be the dog that he's meant to be. You know what I mean? Like, again, I think he's a naturally aggressive dog. He just looks like one of those types, but I imagine, again, that aggression is enhanced by not being able to walk, and Rocky can't do anything about that unless he busts out the house, and makes a run for it. But I feel bad, and so being able to look at Rocky with compassion, also helps to keep my mind in a calm place, because again, I could be wrapped around the anger or the contempt that I feel towards Rocky, but instead I'm like, dang, I feel bad for that dog, because the dog is just doing what it does. It sees something, it thinks attack. It smells something different. It's like, what is this? That's not the dog's fault. But the people who own the dog, they could absolutely change their perspective too and give it a dang on stretch. But hey. So, changing your perspective, loves. That is the message that I offer you in this episode and for this week. And again, if you know how to reach out to me, or if you are interested in reaching out to me, I'd love to hear, how shifting your perspective worked for you. Hmm. All right, lovely. So, with that, let's go ahead and close out this episode. As always, may you be happy. May you be free. May you be peaceful, easeful, useful, and joyful. The light in me honors the light in each of you. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.